I know why you're here today. Animbot for Blender. Let me level with you. No, it doesn't exist. Is it being developed? I don't think so. Maybe. But the real question is, do we really need it? Let's find out. Today's episode is sponsored by me. Use the code below to get 10% discount on any of my products. Hello everyone, I'm Luciano and this is the Adventures of LollypopMan. In today's episode, we are going to go tool by tool and we'll dissect Animbot to see what we can find in Blender that's similar or equal or even better. So let's see if at the end of this video, you really do need Animbot or not. Precise transform. We have a sphere. I'm standing on a keyframe. I can select an attribute and press plus and minus, and it will increase and decrease the precise transform. You can change the value to be something very minimal, which is, I guess, the idea. And you can also assign hotkeys to that, which is great. So you get precise transform there. In Blender, you go here, and the way you can do this is either you can slide the values by holding shift and it will make them a lot more precise. But also, if you press G, for instance, and then press the arrows, you can move with that same precision, or even more precise, I would say. By default, whenever you press G, R, or S in Blender, you're moving on the view axis. And so if now I press Y, I get the along global Y axis. So now I can, when I press plus or minus, it will move it along that line. Also, this can be complemented by something like pressing 10, and then it will get it 10 units positive. And if I want to turn that into negative, I just press minus, and then it will do the opposite. It will push it back to this way. I can do this with R, G, and S, so rotation, location, and scale, and it's very simple. It's not as like the same level of precision that you can get by changing this value here, but I think it's precise enough. Most of the time, I really don't even press that. I actually hide those. So the second one is nudging. What nudging does is that if I have a bunch of keyframes selected and I nudge to the side, it will nudge them on one keyframe or 10 keyframes or whatever is selected here. If I, on the contrary, don't have any keyframes, I'm not standing on any keyframes, and I press the nudge button, it will bring the keyframe that corresponds to that. So if I press nudge to the right, it will bring the keyframe that's at the left towards the right. I use this a lot of the time. And in fact, I have them on hotkeys, and so it's really easy for me to just move keyframes around when I need to. In the case of Blender, those functions are not the same. They don't work as one tool. So on the one side, you have G, so I can press G in the timeline and then start moving with the arrows, and this will push or pull keyframes around. It's not as great because in the case of the timeline, because it depends on the threshold of the mouse moving, sometimes I need to press 3 or 4 times the arrow for the keyframes to move. Another option that I have is that I can press G and then press 1, and that will move it 1 frame, or 10, and that will move it 10 frames, or 50. But it's kind of in the middle, right? So it's not so easy to move one by one, but at the same time, if you want to go precisely somewhere, you can do that. You also have the snap, so you can click, for instance, grab one of those keyframes and press Shift S, which will give you the snapping menu, and you can snap it to the current frame, which will bring it wherever your time slider is. So that's pretty handy. Also, you can snap them to seconds. So if I change my timeline to seconds with Control T, I can grab all of them and say Shift S, and then nearest second, and they'll all go to the nearest second. How useful is that? I have no idea. I've never thought about actually using it, but it's there. Also, you have markers, which we'll talk about soon, but you can snap them to those markers as well. And also nearest frame, in the case you're working with subframes, you can snap them to the nearest frame, but that normally is not something that you use a lot. You get the nudge, and here you can nudge all the keyframes, all the entire scene. In Blender, you don't really need that because it's actually quite easy to see the entire all the keyframes on the scene if you just don't have anything selected. Like if I press that, I have several objects and they all have keyframes, right? As you can see, if I select with A all of them, I can see all the keyframes. And in the other hand, if I have this filter unfiltered, which is what I have by default, because I can filter by selection, but I can click that and then that will show me everything. And then if I click this one, it will also show me all the keyframes of the objects that are hidden. I don't need those specific ones to move the entire scene because I can just do them very easily. And also you can see I have a summary here, so it's easy to grab the ones that go that way or the other way, right? Another thing is I can select a bunch of keyframes, which I haven't found a way in Maya that's easy, where I can click the side of the time slider. So each side, if I control click it, I get all of those keyframes to that side. You can also do the same with the brackets on your keyboard. So you press either of both brackets and it will select all of the keyframes before or after that, which is great for when you are retiming your stuff and you want to just like select those, push them over there, select those and push them over there, right? Select those, click, control click and push them over there. That's fantastic for me. Then we have reset transform. So you can move this around. If I right click this, I get translation, rotation and scale. Or as you can see, I have a hotkey, which is 0 in my case, to just do all of them at the same time. I use only that one because if I do that, it zeroes out the entire thing. But if I just want to go and zero out one specific one, I can just select those there and press 0, or select those there and press 0 and select those there and press 0. So they're kind of like context sensitive in a way, right? In the case of Blender, I don't have one to reset them all, but I can always press Alt R, Alt G and Alt S, and that will reset them to 0. This is a feature that it's genius and it's overlooked. So if I have several objects and this one doesn't have any keyframes and the other one does, it allows me to create keyframes at the same spots that this one already has in this one. Now you see they have both keyframes, even though that one's not moving, but they have keyframes in the same place. As far as I've tried, and this is me using Blender for a long time, that doesn't exist. But that's one of the things that I wanted to put out there for developers, because I think that is a very simple and neat feature that somebody could start coding. So we got the sliders, which are amazing. I use them all the time. I even have them on a hotkey as well, which is B. I love this because I can do that. And so in Blender we have two things. One of them which we cannot use in object mode, which is the breakdowner, which is sad. I really would like to have the breakdowner available in the 3D view for objects, because yeah, it's useful. On the other hand, I have this little add-on called Animate, and so we get similar thing. You get all of these little ways to transform your keys. We can grab them here and say I can ease to ease, or I can blend them. So I can, for instance, blend to ease, and so it will ease out to that one or to this one. Or I can slide them to one side or to the other. I can scale them to one side, so to the first keyframe, or I can scale them to the other keyframe. And so that it's basically these two combined ones. There are a few more, a few less, but they're enough that you can definitely replace them. You can also stack them, so you can have several of them. I can have the twin and put that one there and put another one, add another one, and so I can have several of them. I can also use overshoots if I want to. And then I'm just gonna jump the gun. I'm gonna jump right over here to the global offset, and here we have Anim All. I can just move this one over here, and as you can see, the curves are moving already. So I'm just gonna put this over here. Strangely, that's probably a bug. Tangents were screwed up. They should have stayed the same. But as you can see, I can, if I'm doing blocking, I can just activate this, move it around, deactivate, and then it starts doing it from there. So that's still working for the most part. Let's continue on to the next one. So we got all of these ones. In Blender, you already have hotkeys to do that, so it's not that terrible. As you can see, I can change from constant, which would be stepped, to linear, which would be something like linear tangents. The difference is in Blender, when you change a keyframe to linear, it's not the same as vector. And so linear has interpolation, it's just always linear. And I can have a keyframe that's linear mixed up with a keyframe that's constant. So you get linear and constant. But also I can have Bezier, and that changes it to actual Bezier curves where you can modify where they're pointing at, right? Also, I can change to vector, and vector is not the same as linear. Vector just means that the tangents are pointing toward, like the tangent of one is pointing towards the other keyframe. And so it will try to make a straight line. So for instance, this one is in vector, right? And this one is in automatic. And so this one is pointing over there as long as this one allows it to. That's it. But because it's vector, and when I rotate this around, then this one is trying to point to where it shoots. It's kind of weird, but it works. So you can change like that, like that, like that, like that, like that, like that. Actually, auto clamp. So for instance, I have vector, but I want this one to be flat, and that's another type of menu. But I think the best part of this, besides the different ones, the new ones that here added, like the cycle matching or the polished tangent, which I use a lot. Besides those new ones, the rest of them, they kind of work the same as you want them here. You just select something and easily switch them. Then you got keyframe colors, which you have 3. And in Blender, you have something called keyframe types, which I'm trying to push for a change. They're great, but they could be better. If I press R, and then I get extreme. So press R, can that one and that one. They don't do anything particular. They're only a visual cue for you to be able to see them and move them around and say, oh, this one is one type of keyframe, this one is one type of keyframe, and this one is one type of keyframe. That is it. And that's all right. Let's move on to the next ones. We have this little guy here that tells you how many objects you have selected. In Blender, you have 2 different things. One of them, if I right click here and show scene statistics, if I'm in object mode and I have objects, I'll have the amount of objects selected. If I have 2, 3, 4, it will tell me this is the amount of objects that there exist in the scene. This is the amount selected. Also, if I open up a rig, as you can see, I'm in pose mode, and then here it will say 91 bones selected out of 326. Basically 326 is all the bones that live in this character, and this is all of the ones that I have selected. Then we got this selection sets, which is great. What I love about this one, mostly now more than ever, is the fact that I have this hotkey where it just comes over. And the other thing that I really love about it is that it's very minimal in size. In any case, this works really well. Also, I really like that we have this one to select them both, and then I can deselect one of them with control, like modifier keys. You probably know this stuff, like very, very handy. So in Blender, by default, we have a selection sets add-on, which comes with it. It's called bone selection sets, and it has something here under the armature panel. And so first of all, I'm going to select those. I'm going to create a new one, and I'm going to assign them. I'm going to create that one, I'm going to select that one, add a new one, and assign them. Problem is, if I select one of them, that worked. But if I want to select the other one, now it adds to the selection. So I start going nuts because I need to perform another step before even thinking about it. But it can sort of work, right? Also, they created this very hidden hotkey, which is Shift-Alt-W, which allows me to go and pick one of them or the other one. But because the selection is always additive, then what am I doing? Like most of the time, you create a selection set with a group of objects because you want to select that group. If whether you want to add or subtract from that group, it's less used than using that particular selection set that you created, right? And here, there's no way I can use modifier keys to deselect from one or deselect from the other. That doesn't exist. But as I talked in a video a couple of days ago, there is an extra groups add-on in it from scratch, and I'm going to turn just that one on. And so now I can just create that one, create that one. Obviously I can name them if I want. So this is leg R. Okay, as you can see, the hand by default solo selects the thing that you want. If I press shift click, then it will add the other one. If I press alt click, it will subtract it. I would like it to be control, but it's okay. You can change it as well. In fact, if I go to here to the selection and operation detail, you will see that remove from selection is Alt, but I can shift it to click Control. Done. Now I can just Shift, 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 and then Control, 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 Control. Isn't that perfect? To add to that, hotkey Y, you get a little panel, kind of like in Animbot. Just go and click the ones, and it works exactly the same as I was showing you before. Let's add a little bit more. Let's add options. Let's turn on the options, and we can add color labels. They're not amazing because the menu is massive. At least it doesn't make it bigger, but you can now have colors. You say that one is that color, this one is this color. I would like to have an easier palette to pick from, but this should work. And so now if I press Y, I can color code them. Another feature that I like about this is that it not only allows you to select, but has other options, like I can keyframe the entire selection set. Then select opposite. I really like this. So sphere L, R. So yes, so this basically works on naming, which is great. So if I press that and if I press Shift, it will add the selection. In Blender, if I'm on a rig and the rig is constructed with certain naming conventions, you can press Shift Control M and it will do it to the other side, and Extend will add that other one to the selection. Also, there's a video where I talk about doing this and mirroring poses. You've probably seen this one. You can copy and paste animation. So I'm just gonna copy it, select that one and paste, replace. No, I don't want to. And so now both of them have the same animation. They're just sitting one on top of the other. Let's just move this one around and you can see that they both have the same animation. Cool. Here we got that animation here. So I got all these keyframes right here. And so I can Control C, copy this animation. I'm going to go to the same file that doesn't have the animation. I'm going to select them all, press I to insert one keyframe, and then I paste the animation, and there it is, right? So I can copy an animation from one file to the other one. So one of the things I like about this feature in Maya is that I can have two separate Mayas open and copy animation from one to the other one. And I believe that this was possible in Blender, but today it just doesn't work anymore. In any case, you can still copy and paste animation very easily, as you see in the same instance. And opening another Blender scene doesn't take that long. Let's go copy, paste, post. So in Maya, I can just do this, copy, paste, copy, and then I'm just gonna delete that one there and paste it to that one. Boom, copy, paste, post. Here, I can just go here and say, Control C, copy, and then paste it here, Control V, and it's pasted. The next button is mirroring poses, which you may know. Blender has mirroring poses, so you can see I can press, as I showed just a second ago, I can copy this pose and paste it inverted. Then we got the align tool, which I really like, clear for this. So if I have this cone like this, and then pointing that way, like so, and then I go and give it a line, it will place it in the same orientation. As you can see, they're now aligned. Here we do not have that, and if I do this selection to active, it will do that. So now they're standing one on top of the other one. If I rotate them, and then as I said, I go transform, align, orientation, so they're two separate things. Yeah, so we have those, but in the case of animation, which is basically our case, I haven't found a way to just tell that one to go there or whatever, like one controller to move where I want. Let's say I want that one to go there. I can go and say selection to active, which, yeah, that works, but it doesn't orient it. So, and I don't have a way to tell it now oriented to that other object. Like it will stay with its own orientation, right? So it puts it in the origin of that object. As you can see, the origin is there, but it doesn't orient it to, I'm sorry. This is the relationships, which I really love. Copy relationships. So we got that, right? And so now I want to use the relationship. And so what this will do, first of all, I'm going to make sure this one also has keyframes, at least in the same places. I'm just going to do that. And now I'm going to copy the relationship from this object to that object where they're right now. Copy it, And then I'm going to paste it to this guy on all those keyframes, paste relationship. I can say all keys or big keys. I'll just do all keys. And so you'll see it's placed it in every single point there. I'm just gonna spline it now. Now, if I want to do it very, very precise and I don't care about the keyframes, I can just do the same and just bake frames. Boop. As you can see, in every frame, it maintains the exact relationship that I copied at the start. And Blender doesn't have that. Then copy-paste workspace is something that's in the works in Blender. The switching tool, the wonderful switching tool, we don't have something like that. In the case of the rotations, if you turn on Rigify, Rigify has a convert order tool. It doesn't tell you which one is the best one, but it helps you. And you can convert an entire rig or all of the animations that are contained within the rig, because in Blender you can contain several animations, and that's it. Then we got the temporary pivot, and here's the strength of Blender. So basically a temporary pivot does this. You can just click that and then put that over there and then say move like this. The one thing I really like about the Animbot one is that it has memory. So I can create a temporary pivot to this guy or for this guy, and they keep their original pivots all the time. But if the moment I activate it, it remembers that it had this pivot over there. If I click this one and click that, it remembers that it has its pivot over there. Blender doesn't have anything similar, but it has very powerful 3D cursor, which is this little thing that you've seen me click around here. It has its own button here, but if you're in any other tool, you can just shift right click and put it anywhere where you want. You can place it on top of the geometry if you wanted, or stuff like that, which is great. And so what this helps, it's basically the same as the other thing, but you need to set it. And so if this is my body control, and normally it moves from the body, but now I want it to pivot from there. So I can press the dot in the keyboard and then switch to 3D cursor, and now it will pivot from there. I can also use it for stuff like this, which is exactly what would happen here. This pivot helps you posing, but when it interpolates with the normal pivot. So it works more or less to fake stuff quickly and stuff like that. So for instance, let's say I didn't have this animation, right? And I wanted to do the steps here. And so let's imagine that I didn't have a foot roll like the one I have. And so I'll just put my pivot there and just pivot from there. And then I'll put this one over here and pivot from there. And I can set up all my keyframes and work like this was stop motion. Another thing which is not directly related to the 3D cursor pivot is that you can pivot from several different things. For instance, normally you would pivot from there, right? But say I want to grab my character and pivot from everything from there. I can do that. Or I can do, let's pivot from this one, from not that one, from this one. So I'm gonna select that one as active. As you see, it's slightly brighter. And now I can pivot everything from there. I can also select several of them, several objects, and have them all pivot on their own. So for instance, I can grab that guy, that guy, that guy, and then select this, which is the same menu as this one, by the way. Individual origins, and then each one of them will pivot on their own. So now, for instance, because we're in individual origins, I can scale, and each one of them will scale separately to their own pivot. If I use, for instance, a bounding box, they'll all scale from basically the same point in the middle. But also I can turn affect only locations, and instead of scaling, they will spread. Then we have the super micro transforms. I've already showed you that. I already showed you this. Well, we have this arc tracker, which is wonderful. So we have that, right? And so let's put a track on the hand. And so I have several ways of doing this. If I right click, I get calculate motion, and then I have to tell it to look for those 24 frames that I have. I would love to have a button that would do that for me. And so, yeah, we get an arc tracker. But as you can see, when it asks you can choose heads or tails, because in Blender a bone consists of heads and tails, not only of the pivot. And so you can change from where it's happening one of the two parts, which is somehow useful. It's actually more of a workaround than anything, because depending on what you're trying to grab from the bone, it might be more useful to use on the tail or on the heads. You can't do both heads and tails of the same bone, which would be appreciated, but it's there. It's faster than it used to be, but nothing like the possibility of having those very nice trails, which I really like looking at in spacing temperature, which tells me where it's faster, where it's slower, and also being able to see a particular amount of frames without having to recalculate everything. Also having the offset, which is the thing I use the most, and just make sure that I'm calculating it from that tip. Now, as you can see, I can know where that tip is all the time. For instance, if a character is heavy, instead of trying to calculate the nose, which belongs to the face rig, you can select the head and then just offset that point to the nose, and then you still get the calculation of the nose because the nose moves with the head. And you get that tracked very well without it being so heavy on your computer. And so offsetting is incredibly useful. Also, it allows you to track whatever is not in a control, because really you don't want to track controls, right? You want to track parts of the body. You want to track a corner here, you want to track an ear, or you want to track this area here because you can see a pop there. And so the controller that controls the shoulder never pivots from there, it pivots from somewhere inside. So I don't care about that part, I care about the lines there. So then we have this, which turns off the viewport to make it faster to interact with other things, non-existent in Blender. Then we have this, which I really like, mostly for when I'm doing lip sync. I really like to select areas and call them things like with words. Say if I have a character saying several words, I sometimes just mark the area where he says that particular word, which is great because it allows me to see, oh yeah, here I'm talking about this word, here's this word. A lot of the times when you're working on lip sync, at least to me, I get tired when I'm trying to not necessarily focus on the lip sync itself, but focusing on other parts of a hand gesture or something like that. And I don't want to be looking exactly for where he's doing that hand gesture by ear, where he should do it. So I mark areas. Oh, okay, so here's the word. I can just visually know where I'm standing at. Blender doesn't have the bookmarks, but it has markers. And markers also have names. You can press Ctrl M and go hola. And then go to the next one and create a new one. Again, M. And then you have to hover that little area to make the hotkey work. Kubo. And then again, estás. And so it's similar. It's not as powerful because you can't, for instance, I really like the fact that I can shift click and it will bring me to each one of the back. If I control click, it will jump between those areas forward, or I can just go back to the entire thing. And here you don't have much control. You can do that. Basically, that's it. It doesn't have any colors either, which I would appreciate, to maybe at least just mark from there to there, and then from there to there, and then from there to there. That would be useful, just to be able to see them better. And then we have all these little tools here, which I really, really like. So Smart Oiler Filter, we don't have that in Blender. Clear Animation, Crop Animation, which I really like. So if I select all of that and then I go boom, crop animation, it just leaves that. That doesn't exist in Blender. Remove redundant keys and static animation curves. So if I go here and I show you this, and then I go X and I get clean keyframes, basically removes the redundant ones. So we have something similar to those. Reverse animation. In this case, we can, instead of reversing it, we can select it, for instance, say we have that, and then we can Control M, and then by times over current frame, Control M, yeah, that that basically inverts it in time. Let's just delete that keyframe. But it depends on where I'm standing. So if I'm standing here, that one, it will do it on the cursor. Then if I do the same, Control M, or values over 0, it does the values, so not something that you want to do. And then over the first selected marker, that's the first selected marker, and so it will do that. Not super useful, but at least the reverse one works well. So settings, smart keys, and all of that doesn't really work, doesn't really exist. Smart go to previous keyframe, smart go to last keyframe. If you press up and down, it will just go to keyframe, next keyframe. If you select one and press Shift G, no, Control G, it will bring the cursor there, but that's as close as it goes. Then smart snap keys, it doesn't have that function. I think I really like it. Then all of this is very, very directly related of how Maya works. So none of this exists, obviously. Graph editor extra tools, auto hide, static anim curves, no, that we don't have that. Frame seconds, no, we don't have that either. But I've never used that, to be honest. Manipulator extra tools, I haven't used these ones either. I should probably. Extra selection tools. The select non-keyed, I miss this one a lot. So if I have several of them and I want to figure out who does this keyframe belong to, if I go to deselect non-keyed frames, it's a weird name. It doesn't make any sense, but it will keep that object selected. Deselect non, it could be deselect deselect all objects but keyed one. I don't know. It's a weird thing to create. Alan, I get you. It's a really hard feature to name. Don't worry. Deselect static objects. So basically, if I have one of these objects that really doesn't have anything, so and I go deselect static objects, I have no idea what that does. Select all anim curves in the scene. Well, because Maya is like, what's it called? Node-based software. There's a lot of, it's very easy to hide stuff. And with this, and to have things hidden, nested into nesting nests, it's really hard to really find everything. So if you want to select everything in the scene, you can use this one. Select hierarchy. Basically, it will select, for instance, this guy has this hierarchy where this is the parent of the other three. So if I select the one, even though it looks like I have selected them all, these ones aren't selected really. So if I select that one and select hierarchy, it will select them all. And then rig controls, that one is great because it will try to detect what are all the controllers that belong to that rig. In Blender, you really don't need that because you are kind of isolated in a rig when you're animating it. So as many objects as there could be outside that environment, say that I can select all those objects, but if I'm in pose mode with the rig, no matter how many things I try, it will only select the controllers of the rig. And then all of these display toggles are somehow here. It's not a great implementation of them, I have to say, because it hides them from the viewport, but then also they stop affecting. So if, for instance, I have a light, point of is I hide the light and the light stops working. But I want to be able to hide the gizmo of the light here. That's the idea of this to me. But it hides it stops affecting the character. I just want to stop looking at the light object, but I want it to still affect without, yeah, so not great. Also, there's no way for me to turn them off quickly besides doing that and that. And you can see when the menu is kind of long, it's very easy to just like go away. And so you start doing weird things and you lose more time than what you should. And so at this point, all of these popovers, I think. All those popovers that have multiple selections should have like an all and none. So like you do here, you have all and you have none. And then you can go and choose only polygons or only lights or maybe all, and then just turn off the ones that you don't want to see. Yeah. Hey, don't complain, it's free. Anim Recovery, which is great. I have to say something. Blender is really fast at saving, really fast at saving. And at this point, you haven't really noticed, but the autosave is already set to every 2 minutes. So every single 2 minutes that we've been working on this, it's saved. So if I go recover last autosave and I'll just click the latest one, you see here it's saved at 12:02 and it's 12:13. And this file is particularly small, but even if the file is 100 megabytes, 150 megabytes, which is a regular production file, at least for me when I'm at work, and this autosave, I actually usually put it in 1 minute. And so I really never get to lose any work, no matter if it's animation or anything else, because it's constantly saving in the background, saving. And this one I really like. I never used though, but I really like it because I use my computer like that. If I'm going to open an app, I just press Windows key and start typing. This I inherited from Spotlight in Mac, where you had a hotkey and you just started typing and then press enter and then your app pops up. And so I started using that. And in Blender, you have F3 and you start typing. I don't know, what do you want to type? Add object or cube. Maybe not cube, circle. Oh, because it's contextual to where we are. So if I go now, cube, so we'll add a cube, bam. And so as I was saying, the autosave, and now I'm going to do something that I know for sure crashes it because it's a very better version, has a bug. So I'll do that, crashed. As you can see also, it will open up like that. And I'll go to File, Recover, Autosave, and we got an autosave with no name. When did it happen? 1 minute ago. Recover, Autosave, and there we go. And so, yeah, after an hour and 18 minutes of recording just of the features, you can see that most of the tools that you want to use for animation are already in Blender. They're just like hidden, or some of them are not very polished. Some of them are even better than what you find by default in Maya. And we're comparing Blender to Maya with Animbot. If you compare Blender to Maya without Animbot, there's no way to look back. I felt like I was missing an arm. I was animating with my feet. Again, I want to reiterate, I invite you developers that want to get started doing small tools to improve quality of life in Blender for more animators to jump on the boat. I invite you animators to try it out. Please reach out. And also, at the end of the day, the animation is in you. It doesn't have to do with the tools. We want better tools to make our lives easier and to go faster, but that's about it. Today's episode is sponsored by me. Use the code below to get 10% discount on any of my products. Do you still think you need Animbot to animate in Blender? Let me know in the comments below what you think. Press the like button, subscribe, and see me next time.